Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs! Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga, the story of Sword and Shield, where previously we were introduced to a young boy named Marvin, who has arrived in the Galar region and has met the young Henry Casey and Professor Magnolia, who are out and about in the wilds of Galar, well, just kind of growing their own understanding. Henry has a tendency to help fix up tools that Pokemon use, while Casey has a virtual Dynamax set and helps Marvin learn about Dynamaxing, where Pokemon grow gigantic. Not Gigantamaxing, Dynamaxing. They set about a little bit of a journey and meet Leon, the champion of the Galar region, and manage to impress him a little bit in helping him corral some wandering Wooloo. Leon calling up Chairman Rose, chairman of the Galar Pokemon League, telling Rose that he wishes to endorse Henry and Casey. They receive Rotom phones with a Pokedex function, and during an encounter with some Dreadnought, Marvin takes in Shovel, the third of the starting Pokemon that Professor Magnolia has. News of this endorsement spreads throughout Galar, particularly amongst the gym leaders. But word also manages to get to Team Yell, who endorse a particular challenger named Marnie, wishing to hinder Henry and Casey. But Henry and Casey manage to bamboozle the members of Team Yell into joining them on a raid battle, where they face off against Dynamax Pokemon, catching them in certain cavern, where Henry catches a Girder. So it seems like they're trying to bolster up their skills and their teams in order to take on the gym leaders and eventually the champ. But there are those who look to stand in their way, apparently. What'll happen next? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, our first chapter is titled, Ooh, Shiny. Legendary equipment. That actually makes a lot of sense for Henry now that I think about it. Alright, you got a nice cover page with the legendaries Zacian and Zamazenta, Casey with several weird-looking Pokemon, Sunfisk, Juicy, Phalanx, Barracuda. Alright, okay. You got everyone sitting around in the RV. Henry is explaining, it happened about a year ago, I think. There was a place I really wanted to see, so I tried to go there, to the Slumbering World, west of Postwick. Oh, and he's back with his Farfetch'd Galarian form. It's funny that Galarian Farfetch'd kind of looked like a punk until it evolves into Surfetch'd. I wonder if they'll come up with an other evolutionary line for Farfetch'd with this. He says, here we are. Apparently, they should be somewhere deep inside of here. The legendary rusted sword and rusted shield. Okay, he would be seeking out legendary equipment. As he comes upon a fence, he tries it, not managing to get in. Saying, it reads, enter thee not without continence? I guess that means we shouldn't enter recklessly. What to do? He then notices something. Two shining lights. He asks his Farfetch, I wonder what that light was just now. Only for a voice say, get out of the way! Move, move, move! And is this her team? Stunfisk, Eusine, Barracuda, Phalanx, and oh hey, one of my favorite Pokemon of all, Toxtricity! Love Toxtricity. Oh, one of my all-time favorite Pokemon in this game. Tell me the Toxtricity is hers. Now, I know it's low-key form and not amped form, but it's a Toxtricity nonetheless, so I'm counting it. And then she promptly runs into the gate with all of her Pokemon. I love how Henry just gently brings Farfetch'd out of the way. Casey says, ow, ow, ow. Henry says, are you okay? So Casey says, do you see that? That wishing star? Henry picks up the sign saying wishing star. Casey says, I see the shiny thing came crashing down around here, right? Henry says, oh, it fell deeper in the well. Casey slaps her head saying, no way, we're not supposed to enter the world without counterfeit. Henry says, continents, you mean? Casey says, I've got no future without that wishing star. Oh, Henry seems to be a bit perplexed. Suddenly, the gate opens and Farfetch just runs in. Casey saying, oh no, no. Your Farfetch went in there. Oh, Henry says in a deadpan voice, no way. Oh no. I bet there are wild Pokémon in there. I don't have any Pokémon other than my Farfetch. I'm kind of scared to go in by myself. And Casey says, I'll go with you. I'm Casey Shield. And Henry says, I'm Henry Sword. Pleased to meet you. And while both being quiet and whispering, Casey says, he's got to be quiet, Kay. That's a Squover. It's a normal type. It's always got berries in its cheeks, so it's tough. That one's Rookity, a flying type. It's tiny and quick, and apparently it can even stand up to enemies larger than itself. And he says, you know a lot, huh? Casey says, I want to be Professor Magnolia's assistant, so I've been studying for basically forever. Do you know who she is? She's the leader in Dynamax research. Henry says, so, Miss Shield. Casey says, you can call me Casey. Actually, please do. And I'll call you Henry. And he says, okay. So, Casey, what do you mean when you said you'd have no future without that wishing star? Casey says, you see, a wishing star is a key item needed for Dynamaxing. Henry says, so basically, you can't help with Dynamaxing research if you can't Dynamax. Casey says, bingo! Why were you at the Wild's entrance, Henry? Henry says, have you heard of the Rusted Sword and Rusted Shield? Casey says, nope. Henry tells her, my family works on the tools that Pokemon uses their gear. We're originally a family of swordsmiths. I was taught how to maintain swords, but I've never seen an actual sword or any armor before. Casey says, oh, I get it. So those rusted things are real armor. So they're somewhere in the world. Henry says, that's the story I've been told. I want to at least get a peek. Casey says, hey, that's your Farfetch. The Farfetch gestures to two glowy bits on the ground. Casey is shocked, saying, oh my gosh, there's 2 whole wishing stars. I can't believe you found them. Thank you. I know. I'll give you one as thanks. With this, you can Dynamax too. Henry looks at the stars, saying, I see. Casey says, but you can't Dynamax just by having that. You've got to have it made into a Dynamax band. Henry says, a Dynamax band? Casey explains, saying, a Dynamax band. It was developed by League Chairman Rose's company, Macrocosmos, using Professor Magnolia's theories as a base. Henry says, I see. Casey says, do you not know who Chairman Rose is either? Henry says, well, I've never really had much interest in Dynamaxing or the Pokemon League. Casey says, oh geez, I never would have expected that from a Galar boy. I've got it. Once you finish your business here, why don't we go see Professor Magnolia? I bet you'd be interested once you get your hands on a Dynamax band. But Henry says, well, this is an awful lot of fog. Casey says, wait, which way did we get here from? Henry says, maybe this is why people aren't allowed in here. Casey says, why not try going this way? Henry says, I don't think walking about randomly would be wise. But suddenly, Henry catches notice of something, grabbing Casey by the shoulder, saying, hold on, Casey. It feels like something's approaching us. Casey says, huh? I don't feel anything. Oh, shit. God, that's even more startling than in the game. As Zacian and Zamazenta approach Henry and Casey, they circle around the two of them like these are gigantic walls. Like, oh God. Henry says, do you think these two are like the guardians of the world? Casey says, yeah. Henry says, it almost feels like they're evaluating us. Looks like we can't go anywhere now. Casey says, what? But we just got our wishing stars. I don't want to be stuck here. She then brings out all of her Pokemon saying, it's do or die. Oh God, and they all have nicknames. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, her Arrokuda is called Kilo, her Toxtricity is called Terra, her SQ is called Peta, her Stunfish is called Mega, and her Phalanx is called Giga. Oh wow! One of the first times the translations were the same. Oh, thank you, Jesus. She has Kilo Scold, Terra Shockwave, Peta Blizzard, Mega Metaclaw, Giga Rock Smash, and all their attacks just, yeah, she says it. Huh? The moves! They went right through him. And all of her Pokemon just kind of flop on the ground. She then says, you can see him though, right, Henry? Am I battling a couple of illusions? Henry says, I don't know. Then he notices something saying, Casey, can you see those? Casey says, of course I can. But Henry says, no, look behind those two. He then opens her eyes saying, oh, what are those? Now they see an altar behind them saying, I can see them. They're a little faint, but they look like a sword and shield. Henry takes a moment and then steps forward. Casey saying, wait, Henry. Henry then says, are you two protecting the rusted sword and rusted shield? I'm not here to steal anything. I'd just like to take a look. Casey calls out to Henry, but Henry says, don't worry. Your moves went through them. They're illusions with no physical substance. An attack from an illusion won't hurt me. And as Zasayan and Zamazenta eye him, Henry steels himself, and as a nervous Casey watches, he walks right through him. He lets out a sigh of relief as Casey says, you went through him! Everyone return! And she recalls her Pokemon saying, you did it, Henry! The illusions disappeared! They approach the altar. Henry saying, those are the legendary rusted sword and rusted shield. Casey saying, it's hard to see it all in this fog. Let's get a closer look. But suddenly, as she approaches the altar, a massive beam of light shines and she's knocked back. In present day, she screams out, "Bam! That's the sound it made!" She kind of startles Marvin. She grabs him saying, hey, we're the ones who lost consciousness. What's the sense in you fainting? Marvin says, you lost consciousness? Both of you? Henry says, consciousness wasn't the only thing we lost. Marvin questions, huh? What do you mean? Henry says there was an incredible light and shock. When we woke up, the fog had cleared. You see Henry grabbing onto Casey saying, Casey, are you okay? Oh, is that how she lost her memories? Henry's then shocked as he looks to the altar saying, the rusted sword and rusted shield are gone. Suddenly Casey wakes up yelling, oh! She says, my Pokemon are gone! Why? Why? Henry narrates saying, we searched all around all night, but Casey's Pokemon were nowhere to be found. We thought they might have fallen into the river and gotten washed away while inside their balls. I was wondering why she didn't seem to have any other Pokemon with her. What the heck? So for the time being, we decided to see Professor Magnolia. Magnolia says, in all honesty, I'm not sure why people are prohibited from entering the slumbering world. Either Casey's Pokemon were blasted away by that light, or they might be with the sword Pokemon and shield Pokemon. Marvin questions, sword Pokemon and shield Pokemon? Magnolia says, that's what we call the two Pokemon that they encountered. Henry insisted on supporting Casey because he felt it was his fault that her Pokemon went missing, and I've known Casey since she was young, so I've had the two of them become my assistants. We're traveling both in search of Dynamaxing and to search for Casey's Pokemon. Marvin then says, that means you still haven't found any of Casey's team. Casey pets Marvin on the head saying, please don't make such a long face, Marvin. That's why we're entering the Pokemon League. We've gotten so much attention from our endorsement that other competitors' personal support team went out of their way to harass us. If we spread the word that I'm looking for my missing team members, I'm sure we'll be able to gather some information. Marvin says, oh, I get it. That just might work. And it's about as good a plan as any. Magnolia then tells him, we've finally made it to Motorstoke. Now you pick up at the Motorstoke Stadium. The person at the reception desk says, Henry Sword, Casey Shield, you have both been registered for the gym challenge. The opening ceremony has ended, but would you like to stay at the Bidoo drop-in? You're still eligible to lodge there. Henry says, yes, please. Casey says, we'd love to. Well, Magnolia says, we can get a room too, so we can all relax for the night. We then cut over to the Bidoo drop-in. I remember this place. Oh, we missed the opening ceremony, huh? Dang, that's a bit of a bummer. As they enter into the inn, Casey says, Henry, look at that. He's got a sword and shield. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. All right. Kind of a weird place to end that. But I thought Casey lost her memories. But no, she just lost her Pokemon. Okay, that is a bummer, especially if you had a toxicity. I'm also just realizing Casey's Pokemon are specifically named after sizes of memory. So a bit, a kilobyte, a terabyte, a petabyte, gigabyte, megabyte, sizes in terms of data. Cheeky. That's why there wasn't a translation. Alright, the next chapter up is titled, Watch Out, Strong Rival. And speaking of said rivals, you got Bade, Marnie, and Hop. It's time let's get it. We pick up at the Motorstoke Bidoo Drop Inn. As Casey says, Henry, that statue has got a sword and shield. Henry gazes at the statue as Casey says, don't they look like the rusted sword and rusted shield we saw in the slumbering world? Henry says, yeah. Well, Marvin questions, Professor, what's the origin of that statue? Her voice calls out, that does not concern that woman's field. She knows little of such matters. I shall answer your questions in her stead. Marvin says, that statue talked. Casey says, tell us. Well, Henry says, please do. Suddenly a voice says, bow wow. Casey says, huh? The voice says, bow wow wark. Casey says, geez, is it bow wow statue or bow wow wark statue? Magnolia then says, that's enough. Get out here, Sonia. Yeah, I knew it was her. With her little yamper. One of best girls, Sonia. Sonia steps from behind the statue saying, you got me, that's my grand for you. Magnolia says, she's my granddaughter. Marvin says, you're professors, and Sonia says, nice to meet you. So, Casey, Henry, and Marvin, who's who? Casey says, I'm Casey. Henry says, I'm Henry. Henry Sword. And Marvin says, I'm Marvin. Sonia says, I'm Sonia, a researcher in the making. I'm also Grand's assistant sometimes. Magnolia says, once in a blue moon, would be more accurate. Sonia then says, So, according to legend, this statue is the statue of a hero. Casey says, a hero? Sonia says, long ago, a black vortex appeared in the gala's skies. That sounds like, after all the vortexes we've seen, that sounds like, an ultra wormhole, honestly. People called it the Black Knight. Suddenly, Pokémon everywhere grew giant. They lost control of themselves and went wild. Then, one youth with a sword and shield appeared and quelled the chaos. They created this statue in honor of that youth. When I saw the statue the first time I stayed here for the gym challenge, I didn't think much of it. Well, but while helping out Gran, I started getting curious, see? Henry then says, did the youth's sword and shield have special powers? Enough to hold back the giant rampaging Pokémon? Sonia says, I don't know. What I've told you is all I've got. Casey then says, Okay, I've got a question. How did your gym challenge go? And Sonia shirks a little. He then says, that doesn't matter right now. Gran, what do you think? The gigantification in the legend. Doesn't it sound familiar? Magnolia says, yes, it does. Sound a lot like Dynamaxing. Truly intriguing. So that's all you've gotten out of your research after abandoning home for so long? Sonia says, that's not my fault. I'm not an established researcher. So they wouldn't let me see the ruins or relics enough for it to be worth much. Magnolia says, I went through the same thing when I was your age, but I kept pressing onward. Henry then says, oh, Professor. Magnolia says, is something the matter, Henry? Henry says, I'd like to get going if you don't mind. Casey says, huh? Marvin says, you're not staying at the hotel? Henry says, the opening ceremony ended. That means there are already challengers out there doing gym battles, right? If we catch up, we'll get more attention. And it'll be easy to get information for our search for Casey's Pokémon. Magnolia says, fair enough, let's go then. Oh, you're not staying at the hotel? Isn't that where you met the other challengers? Henry smiles and Sir Fetch smiles at him. Oh, he got Sir Fetched in there. It's interesting that his Farfetch'd already evolved into Sir Fetch, though. Gotta put him over here because his leak takes up a lot of room. Sir Fetched. Magnolia's in the driver's seat and says, what's this? The engine won't start. Casey, could you take a look? Casey says, gotcha! As she is underneath and Scorbunny using his foot to help her see, she says, there's a bunch of broken parts everywhere. It looks like a wild Pokemon messed around with them. Magnolia says, oh dear, I had gotten permission to go in and research the geoglyphs in Turfield, but now I'm not sure we'll be able to get there on schedule. Henry, Casey, can I trust you to go in my stead? Casey says, huh? But neither of us would know what we're even supposed to be looking at. Henry says, right. Miss Sonia, would you go with us? You've got experience in the gym challenge, that and you're a researcher, so it'd be reassuring. Sonia says, is that okay, Gran? Magnolia says, there's nothing else we can do. I'll get you authorization. Sonia strikes a pose saying, you've got it. Nice, how lucky. Magnolia then calls over Henry saying, Henry, thanks for being considerate. Henry says, for what? Magnolia then says, there's engine oil on Lancelot. Be a dear and wipe it off. Oh. Really? Sorry, Miss Sonia. It's fine, Sonia says it's fine, don't worry about it. The first gym is in Turfield. Once you pass through the Gala Mine Gallery, it's not far. The gym leader is Milo. He's a grass-type expert and, oh, is a boulder blocking the way? A cave-in? There are people stuck up there. As she approaches, eyes them, saying, what happened? As they see Marnie, Bade, and Hop. Hey, it's the rivals. Casey says, hey, they're wearing challenge brands. They must be gym challengers. Marnie says, talk about noisy. Bade says, you two are the challengers too. Are challengers too? Hop just comes over and gives him a hug, saying, hey, that makes us mates and rivals then. It's good to meet you. Meanwhile, Sonia's starting to tear up, and Marvin questions, what's wrong, Miss Sonia? Sonia says, I remember when I took on the gym challenge. Their radiance is so dazzling. She pushes Casey and Henry forward, saying, well, there's 5 of you gym challengers now, right? Why don't you team up to move the boulder? It could make for a nice warm-up. Now Bade says, I could, but the difference in our strength would likely be overwhelming. Etana, confusion. And Etana lifts up the boulder. Casey shouts, well, you're trying to move it. Yeah, try to move it with psychic power. Marnie shouts, what are you, a slowpoke? Break it, it'll be faster. Morpeko, or a wheel. And Morpeko fires off a blast. The Hop says, damn it, I'm not going to let you guys show me up. Get it, Corvusquire, pluck! And Corvusquire starts pecking at it. Casey says, they're all amazing. They're not taking on the gym challenge for nothing. But staring and all can come later. Scorbunny, Ember! With each of their Pokemon attacking, the boulder is promptly moved out of the way. Sonia cheering them on, saying, bravo! Meanwhile, we see that Milo is watching from atop the canyon side, saying to himself, this year's challengers, they really are something. They're all gonna come at me at once. Better not be careless. Gotta get back quick. And he heads back in a Corviknight taxi. Speaking of which, one of my favorite Pokemon, Corviknight. Had one for the longest time up until I got my Noivern. Noivern replaced Corviknight. Hop and Casey start running. God, Hop and Casey are the same breed. That's why Casey kind of took me off guard, because I'm just like, she radiates Hop-like energy. They both run in saying, hey, hey! Oh, Marnie's just covering her ears saying, now they've got an echo going. Though Marvin turns saying, huh? Henry? What's wrong? Everyone's leaving, you know? But Henry waves him off saying, yeah, you can go on ahead with them. I'll catch up with you soon. Did he notice something? As he just kind of walks off. Yeah, Bade is over with the boulder and his Hitana saying, now there's no one to hold us back. Crush it with all you've got. But then he realizes someone is nearby. He turns to Henry saying, can I help you? Henry says, oh, I was a little curious, that's all. All the other trainers were trying to crush the boulder into bits. You're the only one who was trying to move it instead. At first I thought that maybe you just couldn't use moves like that, but I guess I was wrong. I mean, you were protecting the boulder with a psychic move so they wouldn't be able to crush it. So that got me thinking. Maybe there was something important in that boulder, and you didn't want us to see it. Bade pauses for a moment. Well, he doesn't respond as Henry goes on saying, my family's business was swordsmithing, so I know a lot about the minerals from this mine. When you crush boulders from Galar mines, it's not uncommon to find wishing stars in them. Is a wishing star what you're after? I gotta love that he immediately had Bade's number a little bit, because Bade kinda needs someone like that, a little bit shrewd. Bade says, that's none of your business. Henry then says, I'm Henry Ford. The Bade turns away, saying, you don't need to tell me your name. I've no reason to remember it, but you should remember mine. After all, Chairman Rose personally endorsed me as a challenger. My name is Bade, he says with an icy glare. Henry says, Bade, I'll remember that, only for Casey to come up and grab him by the shoulder, saying, geez, what are you doing, Henry? Let's go. And as they take off, Bade then commands his Hitana, who crushes the boulder. He then says, 3, huh? Oh, they're already at the arena, facing off against Milo. Well, Henry is. He also says, the first challenger taking on Turfield Gym today is number 808, Henry Shord. Battling him is our gym leader, Milo. Let the battle begin. Henry sends in his Stealer, well, his Girder, while Milo sends in his Gossifleur. Casey shouts from the stand saying, It's starting, Marvin. And Marvin says, yeah, it is. He then thinks to himself, looking at the other challengers, so these 5 are going to challenge Milo today. Henry has his Girder use close combat on Gossifleur. The announcer says, The challenger, Henry Sword's Girder, skillfully wields his steel beam and fought off Gossifleur. How strong? Milo says, I see the champion didn't endorse you for nothing. Okay, my next move, Dynamax. Yeah, he sends in, that's not still Gossifleur, I don't think. Yeah, Eldegoss. Yeah, there we go. I'm like, no, that's not Gossifleur. The announcer says, Milo immediately Dynamax his second Pokemon, Eldegoss. What will Henry's sword do? Henry finally opens his eyes, saying, We've got tricks up our sleeve too. Lancelot. So Milo's not missing a beat as he tells Eldegoss to use Max Overgrowth. Henry tells Sirfetch'd to dodge it. And then Dynamax. Suddenly, Bade gets a phone call saying, Hello? Oh, Miss Oleana. Yes, I'll be taking part in a gym battle in Turfield after this. Yes, there were another 3 in Galar Mine today. The gathering is going well. Yes. Once the gym battle is over, yes, of course I'll win. I'll be bringing good news along with the wishing stars. Give the chairman my regards. As we see him talking to Oleana while Chairman Rose is in his casual clothes signing autographs. I do wonder what Bade's role is going to be like here. If it'll be a little bit more dynamic than in the manga. Because Bade's story kind of hits a real bump, and then his character kind of goes, Ew. I mean, it's not that his character goes in a bad direction, it's just he loses a lot of importance going forward. Though I still like this story. It's just that what I would consider his status as a rival loses a whole lot of steam after that point. Alright, and the final chapter we'll be looking at is titled Blinding, the End of the Battle. Alright, the announcer says, It's that time of year again. The gym challenge has begun. Many trainers have set off to challenge the 8 gyms. Our very own Turfield gym is the first barrier that they must go through. Today, 5 trainers have entered. A trainer of great potential endorsed by Champion Leon himself, the first challenger to our gym leader Milo, Henry Sword. And the 2 Dynamax Pokemon are facing off. God, you gotta love the blank stares that some of these Dynamax Pokemon have. Lancelot takes to the plate to battle Milo's second Pokemon, Eldegoss, after the defeat of his Gossifleur. A gigantic Dynamax versus Dynamax is about to go down. If Henry and Lancelot can defeat Eldegoss, they'll have cleared their challenge to Turfield Gym. There it goes. Henry's Sirfetch'd Lancelot. It's putting all its might into that strike. What's this? Eldegoss appears to be unscathed. Milo says, Looks like someone didn't do all of his homework. Eldegoss's fluff acts as a damage-reducing cushion for its head. That was an excellent strike by your Sirfetch'd, but it's unfortunate. Massive explosion goes off in front of Sirfetch'd. Marvin calls out, It blasted out Fluff. Okay, that can't be Casey speaking as she's not shouting. So I'm going to say Hop, saying, Just looking at it makes me want to... And both Casey and Hop sneeze. There's a bunch of fluffs around Sirfetch'd. Milo tells Henry, What do you think? I'd say that Fluff will be a pretty tough obstacle for you to see and stab through. Seeing as it's floating about in the air, it must be pretty light, huh? Well, it isn't called Fluff for nothing. But Henry commands... Sirfetch'd, saying Lancelot, and Sirfetch'd uses its shield to blow away the fluff. But as Eldegoss is revealed, the fluff forms around, obscuring the view again. Casey shouts, What the heck? It just blew that fluff. What the heck? It just blew that fluff away too. Trying to get the accents down is wild. Hopton says, It's all back to the way it was. Then Marnie says, Looks like there's no point if you can't blow that stuff out of the stadium. So Babe then says, If you're challenging a gym leader without researching them or their Pokemon, you might as well have already lost. Marvin thinks to himself, Going first is rough. They're all probably thinking, You can't let it start blasting out fluff. Something like that, I'm sure. That's true. The announcer then says, With its field of vision stolen away again, all Lancelot can do is wander about confused. Now Henry calls out for Lancelot to use Max Strike. Oh no, it was Milo calling out for Eldegoss to use Max Strike. It hits Lancelot, but Lancelot manages to find his footing again. Henry calls out, Eldegoss is over there. Use Brick Break, use Max Knuckle. And Lancelot does just that, striking against Eldegoss. But that releases even more fluff. Marvin's saying, whoa, there's more fluff now. If Eldegoss attacks, it'll give away its position, making it easier to attack. But if the counterattack doesn't land right, it'll only get harder to see. Casey then says, but didn't that Max Knuckle do quite a bit of damage? Walt says, yeah, if they land one more hit, they just might win. Though Bade says, I highly doubt it'd be that easy. From everything that's happened in the battle so far, I can't see a single good thing in him as a trainer. Of course, this is his first official match, but also his first time battling Dynamax versus Dynamax, isn't it? He says, bingo! You can tell just by watching him. Bade says, he reeks of being an amateur. He should hurry up and throw the match already. Then he can learn by watching me. League Chairman Rose himself endorsed me. He knows talent when he sees it. Hop then interrupts saying, but that guy's a trainer who was recommended by the champion. Bade says, I don't know about you, but between the league chairman and the champion, I don't think it takes much, though, to see whose endorsement is a bigger deal. Hop then says, the endorser's title has nothing to do with a trainer's ability. Now, Bade then says, oh, but it does. In any case, at least. Marnie then says, would you two shut? Only for Milo to call out, Max Overgrowth, and uses it against Sir Fetch, which seemingly downs him. Eldegoss then shrinks. Well, Marvin then says, Eldegoss is shrinking back to its normal size. Hop says, yeah. Every Dynamax battle Pokemon goes back to normal after using 3 moves. Marnie then says, and you can only Dynamax once per battle. Marvin says, let's see. Henry's only used 2 moves so far, so he's still got 1 left. Now Bade says, it won't be worth anything. Do you really think it's such poor visibility that he'd be able to find Eldegoss after it's back to its normal size? That aside, his Pokemon has likely fainted from that last Max Overgrowth. And Marnie says, Milo's Eldegoss is affected by the poor visibility from the fluff too, isn't it? How do you think it figured out where Sir Fetched was? Though Bade really says, Ish, you really don't know. You two should do yourselves a favor and drop out of challenge already. As Marnie steams, Hop says, oh, so you know then? Know how then? Bade says, yes, but I won't tell you. Milo says, looks like the flow of the fluff has settled down. The fetch isn't moving. The thing must have fainted. Let's see. Is the trainer unable to move too? Hey, Henry. And then he says, shoot, as Max Knuckle is closing in on Eldegoss and immediately downs it with 1 hit. The announcer says, it's out. It fainted. Eldegoss is unable to battle. Eldegoss's fluff is starting to clear, and Turffield Stadium is now clearly visible from the press box. As Milo and Henry approach each other, Milo says, you hid your presence to find a chance to figure out where we were, huh? Good one. Henry says, sorry for being sneaky when you were worried about me. Milo smiles, saying, no worries. We did exactly the same thing. We're even now. You could even say it's my fault for letting my guard down. They shake hands, Milo saying, good luck at your next gym. And Henry says, thank you. The announcer says, challenger number 808, Henry Sword, has won the battle. He's brilliantly defeated Milo, leader of the Turffield Gym. After a 30-minute intermission, we'll be ready for our next challenger. Hop, Casey, and Marvin all cheer, he won, he won! While Marnie's just kind of sitting there watching and Bade is scowling. Casey wraps her arm around Marvin, saying, Marvin, let's go see Henry from the waiting room. See ya! He says, waving to Hop. I love how Hop and Casey immediately became friends. It's just like, best friends. Did we just become best friends? Oh yeah, and Marnie waves too. Aw, friends. Marnie then says, I've got to head out too. While Hop leans back in his chair saying, Henry's Sword, huh? Looks like he wasn't endorsed by the champion for nothing. And Bade just scowls as he walks off. While Hop thinks of his brother, saying, Lee, I think I get why you endorsed him now. In the challenger waiting room, Casey calls out, "Congratulations! Congrats, Henry!" So Marvin says, "You were incredible out there. But how did you figure out where?" Though Casey covers his ears, saying, wow, I still haven't gotten to battle yet. Don't ask that in front of me. And don't you answer him, Casey. Henry, only for Team Yell to come crashing in saying, "Shut up!" Casey says, "Oh, you're the people from the wild area. The heck are you doing here?" Team Yell shouts, "What are we doing here? That's obvious, Yell." Holding up pictures of Marnie, they say, "We're here to cheer on our goddess Marnie." Casey says, "Huh? Oh my gosh, that girl was watching Henry's battle with us." The Team Yell member says, "Oh no," Casey says, "her name's Marnie, huh?" And Marvin thinks to himself, "You didn't notice?" And then Casey runs off with one of the banners saying, "I'll cheer her on too." His Team Yell chases after her. Marvin then notices Henry's walking in the opposite direction. He says, "You're not going with them, Henry?" Henry says, "I'm not." Marvin then asks, "Isn't Casey's match after Marnie's? Aren't you going to cheer for her?" But Casey comes back saying, "Henry, take this. Is the date on the latch match?" Henry says, "Thanks, Casey." And then Casey then shows the Team Yell members, saying, "Come on, the match is about to start." With Henry saying, "Aren't you going to watch the match, Marvin?" And Marvin says, "What about you?" Henry says, "Professor Magnolia is almost here, so I want to take care of some gear." As they head outside, they see Sonia examining a rock. Marvin calls out, "Hi, Miss Sonia." Sonia says, "Henry, you beat Milo, huh? You're the talk of the town." Marvin then asks, "What have you been up to?" Sonia says, "I'm hunting for treasure. When I went to investigate the mural in town, a little girl told me there's treasure buried somewhere in Turfield. The hint is seek yourself standing stones." And Sonia says, "So I've decided to take a look at them." Marvin says, "I'm curious about the treasure, but a mural, huh? I wonder what's it of." Sonia grabs the two boys, saying, "A picture's worth 1,000 words. This way, boys." And she shows off the mural of the darkest day. She tells them, "When it was drawn, who drew it? And the reason why are all a mystery." Marvin says, "It's huge." Sonia says, "Yep, it's massive. That's why I had a thought. Maybe the main goal for whoever drew it was to show us something big." Marvin is shocked, and he says, "If that spiral isn't the sun, is it that black vortex that showed up in Galar's skies, the Black Night, or the darkest day?" Sonia says, "Nice observation, Professor Marvin." Marvin then says, "Then that's a gigantified Pokémon?" We then cut over to the RV where Marvin says, "So, all 5 of you made it through safely through the challenge." So Casey's head is on the table saying, "It was a close call for me though. I thought I was gonna lose. And then Marvin says, "He's gone hoarse. He was cheering the whole time." Casey then shouts, "Our next stop is the stadium in Hillberry. The gym leader is Nessa, an expert with water." Marvin says, so you done proper research on her?" Casey says, "Of course. I'm gonna win smart and stylish this time." Where we see Henry working on the equipment. Man, I really worked myself into a corner with these accents, I swear to God. But it was nice seeing the rivals. I'm glad that the personalities of Hawk, Marnie, and Bade all came through clearly. It was just like, yes, that's them to a T. Love these guys. I love these guys. They just have something about them. Like, that's the thing especially with Hop. That's why I was like so invested in the friendship with Hop, because Hop felt like your best boy, your best mate that you just go in with. It sucks that, the male or female character had to kind of replace him, but that instant friendship that was formed and how he thinks, it's like, man, if they were endorsed by my brother, they must be good people. I just love that vibe. Bade is how he needs to be, and Marnie, kind of a bit of a shrinking violet, but she's got a little bit of attitude to her. Like, I always thought she was going to be this meek character, but no, Marnie's anything but meek. She talks a little softly, but she carries a big stick. Great characters all around. I love these guys. They are my friends. in a figurative sense speaking, like, they just make me think of old friends who I haven't seen in a while. Like, don't get me wrong, I liked Hao as a character, but these crew of characters just make me think more of the group of friends that was X and Y's group. Like, they're just a cool cast of characters, and the people that they become over the course of the story, I look forward to that as well. Like, I'm not, with this introduction, I feel like Hop's character will get the love that it needs in due time. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and hope to see you in the next one. So then, take care. Bye-bye.